Want to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Evelia Scanlon. Eve and I met while we were doing a 2-year training under wonderful Ruth Beaconhole, who teaches nonviolent parenting, and we became friends, and partly because of our own experiences, similar experiences, both having grown up in domestic violence. And then I went on to, and I hate these words, and I know you do too, Eve, perpetrated, and then Eve becoming a victim under it. We need to find other ways to identify people like ourselves other than perpetrators and victims, because I think we're all victims at some point in life and perpetrators at others. But anyway, so Eve has been working in DV facilitation for 6 years. In fact, she co-facilitated with me at Valley Family Center for 2 years. She has also been facilitating parenting classes in Santa Clarita through College to the Canyon. She also teaches, works in giving classes for foster parents. She has offered classes in community libraries, community centers over the last 3 years. Eve enjoys giving information to those in communities, especially in the Latino community. She's passionate about helping others be informed how to change behaviors that have been hindering them and their relationships. Eve is passionate about bringing families together through understanding and empathy, and teaching them how to lead with love and kindness. So grateful to have you here, Eve.
Thank you, James. It's nice to be here.
A couple of years ago, I think around 2015, you did a video for Single Mothers Outreach, which you shared with me. And I'd like to share that video, and after we watch it, then I'd like to have a conversation around it. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
So let me share my screen and then put up the video. Are you able to see the video?
Yes, I can see the video.
Okay.
This is a visual representation of a person coming into our organization. When a parent comes, it's really a cry for help. Let's start by looking through their eyes on what trauma looks like. Has left an abusive relationship, is getting a divorce, received an eviction or foreclosure notice, sleeps in the car, has no place to live, no home. Where can we live? Is dealing with an angry, raging ex-spouse. Has 3 children, 1 child with special needs. Needs clothing for her family. Has a need for shoes. How will I get clothes for my kids? Who can help me? Has no food or little food. How am I going to feed my kids? Relies on public transportation. Can't pay utilities. Has no job. Who will hire me? What kind of job can I get? Has low self-esteem. I'm alone. Who understands what I'm going through? This is trauma. The parent is thinking on surviving, trying to meet basic needs for their family. When you are in survival mode, you're trying to meet necessary needs. This may also create blocks in your brain that have caused you to forget a skill, use the computer, forget how to speak English, forget childhood or people, forget how to write or read. This brings depression, anxiety, desperation. I used to be able to do this. Why can't I? What's wrong with me? How can a parent move forward if all of this is here? They can only see what is in front of them. In order to move forward, these things need to be removed. These primary needs have to be met so a parent can see beyond this and be able to gain self-confidence and empowerment. To be able to plan for the future. Right now, they can only think of today. How can we empower? What does it look like? It starts by providing empathy. It starts by building a village, a community of people that can provide kindness.
So, wow, that always has a tremendous impact on me, Eve. You live that, right?
Yes, it's part of my story.
So why don't we start there? What was that like going through all that?
It was very difficult. Well, it was marriage. It was a DV relationship. It was my second marriage. Similar patterns as to my first. And this time I needed to get out in a different way. So yeah, that was the experience. Now with more kids, trying to manage it all. So it was very overwhelming. That video it's a beautiful representation of my story, the story of many other people that go through it. And it was created for that purpose, so people could see what it looks like. Sometimes when when you haven't experienced it and someone hasn't had those challenges, they don't understand what it looks like. So it's all in front of you and you can't see ahead. You can only see one thing at a time. And when I wrote that, I was volunteering at the organization Single Mothers Outreach, and I remember I needed to work, but I couldn't work for somebody because I was emotionally a mess. I was crying all the time. I think if I would have been hired, I would have been fired. Mental instability. Okay, I was going through a lot of difficult situations that I didn't know how to deal with, how to create boundaries, limits. I was being, it was not very healthy at all. So I asked this organization, since I was already a member, because I was a member of Single Mothers Outreach and they helped me a lot. I was volunteering, so I asked to be the volunteer coordinator. I said, as a volunteer, I have the knowledge. I know that I have management skills. I'm just not able to use them at this time to be hired, but I would like to start working to be functional. And the organization was very helpful because they embraced me. They were very caring. They were very loving. They have a closet. It's called Closet on Main. And that's where I volunteered. I volunteered under Margot Hudson. She's a wonderful woman. Her and Maria and Teresa at the closet, they were like my mother hens. They helped me build my self-esteem up.
I don't want to mean to stop you there, but so you and I worked together. You co-facilitated with me, Eve. And many people look at our deficits versus our assets, and when we work together, working with men who engage in violence in relationship and also women who engage in violence in relationship, you were my teacher, Eve. You have tremendous assets. You have tremendous strength, resilience, insight, faith, so so talk to me a little bit about what led you to this work with men and women who engage in violence in relationship.
I wanted to create a change. I went through a program, and the program taught me, the facilitator, she was great, Patty, taught me how I needed to relearn a lot of things that I had learned as a child. And it was during this year that I was struggling. So at the end of my program, actually halfway down my program, I wasn't able to to continue, but she allowed me to continue and finish because I told her when I'm done, I want to go ahead and share this in my community. I want to go ahead. And it just became a big passion. I wanted to share everything that I had learned to the Hispanic community because I felt that this information isn't out there. We're not taking advantage of it. It's not in the community. It's not being offered. It's not accessible. The only time it's accessible is when someone gets in trouble, because then they're forced by the court system that they have to take it. Both parents, they both have to go to classes. So it became a big drive for me to go in the community, like the library. For some reason, I was very lucky that the librarian in Santa Clarita, a coordinator, got a hold of me because of some work that I did somewhere else. And she asked me if I could volunteer and do a class on parenting or information. So that's how I started just volunteering for the public library. And while their kids were being tutored, I was offering classes to the parents about information, about changing behaviors. There's a lot of things in a dominant paradigm that we were taught. So my goal was to teach the dominant paradigm and how it's affected us and how we can change over to the other paradigm, and why, going through love and kindness is more effective in creating long-lasting relationships compared to the dominant paradigm.
So the other paradigm, a more loving approach, a more caring approach. Can you talk about the two? So and that's we learned that work with Ruth about the jackal and the giraffe,
Yes.
which is nonviolent communication work, right?
That comes from the nonviolent communication from Marshall Rosenberg, the giraffe and the jackal. So yes, I was learning about teaching unconditional love and the difference between the paradigms in the community. And once I started that, they wanted to learn more. So I started teaching different things on how to change certain aspects that we do in the Hispanic community, like the way we talk to our children when they fall down. Normally we tell them to get up, shut up, or else I'm going to whack you because, I'm going to give you something that really hurts. And that's something that's practiced in our community as a dominant paradigm. So we're really telling our children, okay, and just like saying we were told as children is basically shut up, you're not allowed to feel anything unless you're dying. And dying means that I can see blood. And we grow up being adults that are not able to express our feelings or our needs because we were told to shut up. So I've been going through the community teaching about emotional intelligence, why it's important and how we can start doing that.
One of the things that you taught me, and I want you, so you, with both the women and the men, you loved them, you held them. It didn't come as naturally to me, tapping into the feminine within myself, the more empathic, caring, relational part of myself. So I watched you love these men. And one of the ways we did that was when they finished being in group with us, we would send them off and we would come into circle, and you would always bring something. You would bring little hearts, or you would bring a memento that they could remember this time together. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about that.
Well, like in everything in life, we always graduate when we learn. So I wanted to take something that might have been negative to have a happy ending. A moment of remembrance for the rest of their lives. Because we probably won't be able to see them or hear from them for a while unless, we run into them regarding facilitation or we continue the relationship. So I like to bring us all into a circle, and I call it a blessing, where we bless each other and we wish the person that's leaving well, and the tokens, the gifts always came up, and they were always different because it just depended what my heart would say to give them. Sometimes it was a stone, sometimes it was a cross, sometimes it was, a picture. I don't know, every time I knew somebody was graduating, I would just think and contemplate on what my heart said to give them. But I wanted them to know that they were cared for, they were loved, they were embraced, and I was honored. I still am. I'm very honored to walk with everybody through that journey.
And I know that just even in saying that it's so important for you, it fills you with such a sense of purpose and so there's something there like leading with your heart, that heart intelligence, and specifically when we deal with people like us, right? That there's a lot of judgment and shame on top of the judgment and shame we have for ourselves that society imposes on us. You know, that idea of good and bad, evil and right. And why is that not effective? Why is punishment not effective in your perspective?
Well, it's just continuing on a paradigm that doesn't work. You know, we're just teaching that criticizing, you know, we continue to criticize. In the dominant paradigm, you're judging and you're criticizing. So what do? You know, as a child, it's that you learn in order to protect yourself, you have to be dominant. And that's not really what it's about. It's really about learning to be kind to one another, you know, and being accepting, to accept the person for who they are. Nobody's perfect. You know, we're all falling down. We're all trying to get up. And, you know, all we need is someone to at least give us a hand to get up. Not the person that goes around kicking you when you're down. It's more effective when you set up an environment that when you walk into it, you know that you're going to be given a hand up instead of being kicked down.
And so we're going through this epidemic, right? The COVID-19 pandemic. And if you like are in a situation where you have a home, you have a job, you have food, you know, you're going to be okay, right? But there's many of us, specifically in communities of color, that don't have those things. And then on top of that, are already carrying all this adversity, right? Racism and a lack of access and abuse in our lives. And how do we change that? What's your hope for the future in terms of the kind of work that we do?
So my hopes is to create more centers where we can show what kindness looks like and how it's modeled, and be able to have people model it to others. Like everything else, it passes. You know, something that you learn, it's you can't touch it really. You have to see it. You have to be there witnessing it, and when you witness it, then you're able to model it to other people. So when you have an environment where this is being modeled for you, you're going, whoa, there's a different way of being. I can try that. You know, and it's very supportive when you're doing this modeling, that you let people know not everyone's going to accept the new version of you or your new model. A lot of times they're going to bring up who you were in your past, but you have to keep moving forward, because, you know, in a year and a half, they're going to know the new version of you. And that old version just disappears, but it does take time. See, so my vision is to continue to do the work and to have this grow, and for other people to grow also in kindness and model different behaviors. That's my vision.
So when you say have this grow, there's programs out there that deal with men, and again, most of these men are remanded into having to take these classes, right?
Right.
What is this that you want to grow that's different than that, than the model that's out there?
I'd like to grow this program, the one that I do, the one that I teach. I would like for it to be duplicated, taught.
So what things that you do, like teaching them meditation, teaching them, how to sit in silence, doing art. I mean, talk about some of those things that are different than the existing models out there that are about power and control and,
Well,
honeymoon
like I
period.
said, we teach meditation, affirmations, building self-esteem, understanding to be kind with yourself. We do art. Art is something that also helps because a lot of these things are learning how to regulate yourself, but at the same time, it's learning to love yourself. And how can you love someone else if you don't love yourself? You're basically going to treat others the way you criticize yourself, because then you'll turn around and criticize them the same way. So when you start to change the image and you start to love yourself and you're starting to be kind with yourself and you're starting to have empathy with yourself because you're in an environment where they're teaching you these things, they're modeling it for you, and you're copying it at home and with your children, then you become somebody else. The person or basically the version that you really are inside. This is your true version. Just because of the circumstances, the things that have happened, and you're being treated differently, and you're in an environment where there are other people like you having the same support, and you're building this community, then you're able to model it to your own family. And that will also change.
Yeah. There was a young couple. She was in our women's group and he was in our men's group. Do you remember them? You spent a lot of time working with her. I can't think of her name right now. But you shared with me that he reached out to you, or she shared how much she had changed. Do you have any recollection of?
Oh, yeah. Actually, yes. I had her in one class and I had him in another class.
Right. Right.
Yes, and he changed. He was someone that was taking quite some time for him to embrace a different way. But towards the end, he did change. He changed it all.
And
she looks different too.
yeah. And I bring them up because they have children together, right?
Yes, and he's a wonderful co-parent. He provides, he supports, and she's receiving the best support that she's ever had prior to their marriage. And he promised that he would be the best husband and co-parent, even if they weren't married at this time. So he was taking responsibility.
Right.
Okay.
And that's not who he was.
No, actually, this person decided he had his own business. He sold his business and decided to work for cash, not to give his spouse child support to help with the finances or the rent. So she was desperate, looking for work, going through different programs. And just to see their story turn around is amazing. He decided to take the responsibility, lead, because that was the other part we talked about in class, that a parent is the leader in their home. And what kind of leader do they choose to be? Who are they modeling for their children? Because their children will lead in their lives just like they are leading now. And I think once I say that, they start to think, because they don't like who they are at that moment and what they're doing. And just to imagine that their children would go through something like that, on either side, whatever it may be, they start to acknowledge that, wow, I need to do something different. I think the light bulb goes on.
Yeah, yeah. So that assumption that men like myself wake up, to make somebody else miserable, and that's our purpose in life. Really, what you just shared refutes that, right? Most of us actually want to be different. We just don't know how, and we don't really have a lot of resources, skills, practices.
Oh yeah, and the other thing is, if you grew up in an environment where you're being judged and criticized for everything that you do wrong, then you think that it doesn't matter. Even if you do something good, it'll still be wrong.
Mhm.
Okay. But when you walk into an environment where, like parenting, when you praise a child for all the positive things that you see in them, they will grow into doing the more things that are positive compared to the behavior that, you don't want to. So you don't give attention to the negative behavior, but you start praising all the positive.
Mhm.
As human beings, we are the same, especially if we grew up in an environment where we didn't have that, where someone was praising you for all the good things that you do in life,
So this is
wanting
this is intergenerational, right? Your parents, what you shared with me about your parents, which is not different than my parents, they didn't really know how to love us in a loving way, but then their parents didn't love them in a loving way, right? So it just keeps getting passed down on. And it's like, it reminds me of that story of the babies washing down river, and there's these people on the banks that pull them out until somebody actually goes to where the source of, where the babies are coming from. And really, this work, your vision for wanting this work to continue, is about dealing with the problem, not fixing things, but dealing with where did the problem begin. And it really is intergenerational, right?
Yes, it is facing where did the problem begin, and that's what we look at. Everybody looks at their own family history,
Mm-hmm.
and they could see, and I always have them go back several generations and ask, because then you're aware that it's not just you. These behaviors have been passed on.
Mm-hmm. So you're not the worst thing you've ever done. There's so much more potential.
Yeah.
And I feel blessed to have met you, Eve, and to have worked with you, and I know you'll continue to go on to do more amazing work. Thank you so much for spending this time. Do you have any last thoughts?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, James.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping me grow.
Thank you.